Iraqi protesters attempting to enter Baghdad's Green Zone, home to the capital's embassies. They were angered by reports over the weekend that in Denmark, a far-right group, the Danske Patrioter, burned the Quran in front of the Iraqi embassy, an act which Copenhagen criticised. The Danish government condemns the burning of the Quran. Burning of holy texts and other religious symbols is a shameful act that disrespects the religion of others. The incident follows two recent instances in Sweden where an Iraqi immigrant damaged a copy of the Muslim holy book.
نحن نطالب المجتمع الدولي ونطالب السويد تحديدا.
We call on the international community, Sweden in particular, and all the countries that committed these disgraceful acts to apologize to the entire Islamic world.
Iraq expelled Sweden's ambassador, recalled its own envoy from Stockholm, and severed business with Swedish companies. Stockholm's embassy was attacked and burned on Thursday. Permission for the protest that damaged the Quran was given by Swedish police rather than the government. But on the Muslim street, this distinction is not seen as relevant. On Friday, protests also took place in Iran and in Lebanon.
The state of Sweden should know that we, as Arab Muslim countries, are in solidarity against this issue, and we should not accept anything to humiliate this sacred book. This is not freedom of expression. Freedom of expression must stop at our borders.
The saga over Quran burnings has simmered for weeks. And now, as new actors add fuel to the fire, the diplomatic blowback risks spreading even further.
For more on this, I-24 News' Ariel Osran is here with me in the studio. Ariel, with all due respect to free speech, burning Qurans is pushing this a little bit further. Why is this happening over there?
Well, it's happening, first of all, because it can happen. I mean, there is no law in Sweden or in Denmark, for that matter, that prevents the desecration of holy scriptures. In Sweden, for instance, it's up to the police to decide whether it constitutes as a hate crime or not. According to hate crime laws in Sweden, you cannot incite against an individual or group according to their faith and religion. But some will say that desecrating a book is not inciting against a people's. Others will obviously talk against that. But this raises the question, why now? And I think, in countries like in Scandinavian, Northern European countries that have seen an influx of immigrants from the Middle East in recent years, countries like Sweden, specifically the city of Malmö, third biggest city in Sweden, nearly has a 50% Muslim population. And so this has raised also antagonism in those countries by nationalist elements, far right. I think it's interesting that in Sweden, we're talking the same guy involved in both instances. He's an Iraqi migrant. He is Christian, I will say. But it's fascinating to see how the acts of one person can lead to the severing of diplomatic ties between two nations and cause such an uproar across the Middle East. I think, these countries, Scandinavian countries, honor themselves, pride themselves in their freedom of speech laws, but this does require this uproar and this wave of instances of desecration, also by far-right nationalists, but also by former immigrants from these countries. Authorities definitely need to take a hard look at their current policy right now.
If that continues, eventually that will flare up the entire Muslim world. There's no question about that.
So that's one thing that these countries need to look at, but I think we also need to look at the flip side of the coin of where these protests started and who is behind them. And in Iraq, I think it's surprising that it's that the main protests that we saw were in Iraq, and not, for instance, you would imagine perhaps them being in Iran. Why is that? Because strongman Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr sent out his supporters. Again, this is a show of force of kind of passing from the right, as you say here, the Islamic Revolution, the authorities in Iran trying to show that they set the tone as what in regards to what is considered an attack on Islam, and then everyone followed suit, following what Muqtada Sadr's initiative was to send out his supporters. So I think that's also an interesting element that we need to remember, that this is not disconnected from regional geopolitics, and I think this is indeed a show of force by Iraqi Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr, something that we need to look at moving forward.
All right, Ariel Osran, thank you very much for that.